Okay, so now that we've covered some of the basics of charting, more so on the practical way, um, let's get into some advanced stuff. And it's not really so much advanced in terms of charting, but what it does, it takes some of the previous stuff that we've learned with regarding organization, and it puts it into a way to where we can have what we call dynamic charts. And dynamic charts is a very cool feature that I've used many, many times in the past to basically streamline how I get data and then report that data um, to somebody like my the head coaches I used to work with or just whoever. And so let's go ahead and cover some of those aspects now. So here we have our data, and if you look at the bottom of the tab, it's on the charts advanced right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to just organize this data in a pretty easy way, and then we're going to put it into a graphical chart. So the first thing I'm going to have you guys do is we're going to create a table. And if you guys remember, all we have to do is click in a series of data, which is located here. And notice that there's a lot of data here. We go all the way down to 275 on the rows. We click in our data and we hit insert, and then we say table. And my table has headers, yes. And what we're going to name this table is TBL underscore game data. Game data with no space, enter. And that's our title right there. So now we've just created a table. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to create a named list. And if you guys can remember how to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take the athletes that I have in my table. And if you notice, the list restarts based off the date. So here we have January 1st, January 2nd, and our names restart back with the original right here. So I'm just going to select the original players because they repeat themselves, and I'm going to go to data, and I'm going to create a data list. And if you guys remember how we did that, we go to data validation, list, and where's our source? We hit equals, and then we select our list. Okay, and then therefore we have our list right there. Now, the accomplishment that we're trying to do is we're going to make a dynamic table to where we can select the name, select the date, and what it's going to do, it's going to give us these values for this individual. So now we need to um, create a list of those particular dates. And let me just clear this first. So now we want to create a list right there. Let me back up just a little bit because I messed up. What we need to do to create the list, we need to not go to data validation. That's when we actually put the data validation into the box. What we're going to do is we're going to select our names, and we're going to click in this name box, and we're going to call this list names, and then we hit enter. And now we've just created a list with those individuals. We're going to do the same thing right here, and we're going to call this list dates 1, and then we're going to hit enter. Now to confirm our list, if we go to the view tab, the formulas tab, and we go to name manager, we can see that we just created our list of dates and then our list of names. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just create an index match to where these two values right here are dynamic. And let's just clean this up just a little bit. Better yet. So we're going to create a data validation right here. And if you guys can remember, if we hit F3, it will bring up our list of names. And we want list of names, okay? And now if you look, there are our names. Now we want the date. So we go to data validation, list, click in the source, hit F3, and we're going to put in list dates 1, okay? And here you see we have all of the dates right here. Now what we want to do is, so we wanted to do an index match. But if you guys remember, doing an index match, we have to match both the name and the date, and we want to find the minutes. So first thing is we're going to hit equals. Equals will prompt Excel that we're going to do a formula. I'm going to first start by typing an index. And you can easily do that by just typing the first couple letters, and it usually will pop up first, and you hit comma, or I'm sorry, tab, and it'll pop it up. Or you can just double click on it, and then there you go. Now, what do we want to index? Where do we want to look up our information? Well, we want to look that up in table game data, right? So notice as I just put that in there, and now we're going to look up all our data in that particular table, okay? Now, if you notice here, it's going to ask us where we want to find this information. We want to find, where do you want to find the data at in the row and in the column? Well, if I hit comma, it's now asking me, what row number do you want to look up? Well, we don't want to look up a specific row. We want to make it look up a name for that row. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say match. And we want to match the name. And I'm going to hit F4 to lock it in. I'm going to press Shift and the ampersand sign because I want to match the name and the date, and I'm going to lock that in as well by hitting F4. And where do we want to look up these values? Well, the first thing is we want to, once we press comma, it's asking us where what values do we want to look up? Well, we want to look up name and we want to look up date. Where do you want to look that up at? Well, we want to look it up in this table, this game time table. So if we press TBL, game time data, I'm just going to type TBL and then press tab. It now selects that data or that array of table. But essentially, all I want to do is I want to just find those values in the name and in the date tab. Now to do so, to get this, to find it there in the name and in the date, if you hit the open bracket sign like that, what it just did is it provided me with the headers right here. Well, we want to look up the name, obviously, and the name. So I can just press down, tab over, close bracket, and notice it just highlighted that in green. See the green part? And now it's highlighting in green. I hit Shift, press 7 for the ampersand sign, and I'm going to type in TBL, game data again, and now selects all that data, but we want to find the date right here. We want to find the date and the TBL right here. So I bracket sign, date, close bracket sign, and now it just highlighted that particular one. And what do we want? A less than match or an exact match? Well, we want an exact match. So we press 0, and then we close that parentheses. Once we close that, we're done asking what row you want to find it in, or rows in this case. Now, to get the next part, we want to go onto column. Once I press comma, watch what happens over here. I press comma, and now it's going to ask me, okay, what column do you want to find it in? Column over here. Well, if we want to find minutes, the column is simply the 1, 2, 3, the third column. So I press 3, I close my parenthesis sign, and I press enter. And then there you go. So let's just check that. How many minutes did Dax Bastian play on January 1st, 2019? He should have played 5. So if I change this to Dax on January 1st, it then pulls up 5. Now let's repeat this step for the rebounds, steals, and then total points. Now we're going to do this somewhat easily by just pressing Control C and then Control V, Control V, and Control V. Notice as I pasted it in each one of these, it just gave me 5, 5, 5 across the board. Now this is one great thing about using the lock-in sign, because if I would have just dragged that over and I didn't have these in there, all of these data points would have been messed up. The only thing that's messing up here is the fact now I have to change my column, right? Remember, I'm telling right now, this is telling this formula to pull from the third column of this table. But now we want to find rebounds. Rebounds is in the fourth column. So now I'm going to hit 4, and now I have rebounds. Same thing with steals. I'm going to hit 5. Now I have steals. And how many points? It's in the 6th column. And now I have 22 points. Let's just double check to see if this worked. Let's go to David Cassidy. On the January 1st, he had 6 minutes, 5 rebounds, 4 steals, and 27 points. And everything's matching up with how we want it. So where does the dynamic chart aspect fill in? Well, this is where we can get our dynamic charts from. If we just copy that or select that, and I go to enter, and I go to recommended charts, Excel will give me those recommended charts. And because we're looking at values, the column chart actually is probably our best bet. So we can hit OK. And one way to kind of hide some of these things, sometimes I like to put it over the data point or maybe just below. In this case, we're just going to hide it over. We're going to hide it over our data, like such. We're going to get rid of those backgrounds. And we're just going to tidy this up just a tad bit by bringing these a little bit closer. So my table's already, or I'm sorry, my chart's already selected. And what I can do here, actually, is I can make these a little bit closer to one another. I'm forgetting which. I think that's about the best we're going to get it. Now, another thing that we want to do is we want to have this to where this chart can give me this table each time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dynamic range for this chart to pull from. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove this. So what I want this chart to do is every time I change a name here, what it's going to do, it's also going to give me the name and the date for that particular individual. Now it takes a little bit of advanced formatting, but we're going to go over it here, and I'm going to show you guys the formula. So what we're going to do is we are going to go and combine these two values to where they'll line up in one cell and space out correctly. Now it's not as simple as just saying enter this shift for the and sign and this. Let's say we just did that and hit enter. Look what we get. Tyler Falconberry 43466. What it's doing is giving me the numerical value with no space. Now what we want is we want the name with a space and also the date format. And so we have to do something like this. Notice that in order to get a space, I have to put an and, quotation space, and quotation space, and a text format right here. So let's just do that real fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit equals. We want Tyler Falconberry. We're going to press the shift 7 or the ampersand sign. Then I'm going to do space, quotation, space, quotation, shift, and another quotation, space, quotation, and now this is where we need to add in a text formula. So I press TX, I can double click on that, or I can hit tab. And the values of how I want this, or the value I want, is the date. And how do I want that formatted? Well, I have to put this in a text format. To do that in a text format, I have to put that quotation there, and I want date, or the short date. So I want the day, month, and then the year. Close quotations, close parentheses, and I hit enter, and there I have my title, that what I want. One thing we can do is we could probably add in a point there. So if I click in the middle here and I press that and I put a hyphen there and press enter, now I have a hyphen in between. If you want, you could just take that out, but I'm going to take it out for now. So there's our name and our date. Well, how do I get that to filter in here? So the way we're going to do that is I'm going to click on our chart title. Then I'm going to click in the formula bar and I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to select that cell and hit enter. And notice that it changes to our date. So anytime that I change this and this, it will change according to what's in that cell. Now we could just simply cover that up, and if I want to check a specific player on a specific date, I can easily do so to get understanding of what his metrics were for that time period. And you can do a number of different things with these dynamic charts, which make it very simple to report data. Now this is just one example. You can do this for a number of different things, whether it's currency, money, what have you. And that messed up somehow. So that is just one simple way to showcase that. Let's do another example where we do line graphs. So right here, we're going to create a table, and then we're also going to create a list for these exercises. And what we want to do is we want to track the time progression for a specific exercise and what the 1RM for that exercise was based off here. Now what we need to do, what I don't have listed here, is we need to create a date list for these dates. And if you notice from here, it's just the first of each month. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a table here. And all we have to do is click in within that string of data. We hit table. My table has headers, yes. we're going to rename that table TBL strength data. So TBL underscore strength data, no spaces, hit enter, and there we have it. So we also want to create a list of the exercise, and these are our exercises here. So if I just select those, I go to my name box, list exercises, and hit enter, and there we go. Last thing we do is we need to create a separate list for our dates, and what we're going to do here, 1-1 2019, enter, and we just need the first day of each month, and I can just drag this down. Actually, better, I won't be able to do that. Let's see if Excel is smart enough to figure this out. So notice I just changed the first date, or the day, or the month, I'm sorry, and it changed the month for me. So we're going to call this list dates 2, and select our range to the name box, list dates, no spaces, 2, enter. Actually, we don't need that per se. What we do need, disregard this, we don't actually need this. We do need this in our table though. So we want to find out the the 1RM for each one of these exercises for each one of these specific dates. So let's first start by cleaning up some of this data. And we're going to put our name data validation here. And we already have our list. We hit F3. We have our names. Okay. And our exercise, we're going to do the same thing. F3. And now we want to find the values for each one of these dates. So to do so, we're going to do an index match for each one of these values. So for this one, it's going to be a little bit more complicated, but we're going to go through it slowly so that you guys can get it down. The only thing that's really different is that our table that we're going to set up is a little bit, it's rearranged a little bit differently. But the features still hold with what we want. So the way we're going to do this is we want to index. And what do we want to index? We want to index all the table strength data. So TBL strength data. Now it's asking us what rows do we want to find this in. Well, we want to find the name, obviously, but we also want to find in the date right here. So what we need to do is we need to match the name, but also the date up here. Because our tables are set up, this one's more horizontal and this one's more vertical. So what we're going to do is we're going to match the name and this date up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock that in by hitting F4. And where do we want to look this up at? Well, comma. It's going to be table strength data, open bracket, we're going to do the name, close bracket, shift 7 for and, TBL string data, open bracket, and we're going to go down to date. So now it just, if you notice, it highlighted both those two sections. And what do we want? We want an exact match. And once I hit close parentheses here, it's going to close that. I hit comma, and now it's going to ask me what column. Well, the column that we want to look at is going to be here. But in reality, we want to find the exercise. So what we need to do is hit match. And we're going to look up exercise here. I'm going to lock this in by hitting F4. What do we want to look it up at? Well, we want to look it up at table, string data. And whereabouts do we want to look it up? Well, we want to look it up in the headers. So if I hit open bracket, I go all the way down to headers, and then close bracket. Notice it just highlighted all of these right here. And what do I want to find? I want an exact match. Close parentheses, and we need to do one more close parentheses, and then what it does, it tells Excel that the formula is done. I press enter, and now what we've just created is a dynamic chart, so that whenever I change one of these values, it now pulls up the associated value for this date, for this exercise, and for that name. Let's see what happens when I drag this over. It gives me an NA. And unfortunately, what needs to happen here is you would have to put in one of these values for each one of these times. So let's take that out, clear that. Control copy, control paste. So actually, a way to, you can't, when you use the formula, you cannot drag it over. You have to actually paste it. So if I just Control V, Control V, Control V, down the line, it's now giving me my values correctly. So let's just see where everything's pulling. So it's for the 12th. Let's just double check this. For Tyler Falconberry on the December 1st, 2019 for the back squat. Let's check out what his value is. It says here 181. I go all the way down, find Tyler Falconberry, which is right here. For his squat is 181. So it is pulling correctly. And now we have a way to now create our dynamic chart. Now, because this is in a time series, the best type of chart is a line chart, one to kind of show trends over time. So what we're going to do is we're just going to highlight the day and the associated value, insert, line chart, and now we have a dynamic chart to go with our values. And now you can see the trend of where this individual is over time. And you can now change this to a specific person, and it now changes with each one of those values. It's a great way to report data without having to redo your chart all the time. Now, one thing we want to do is obviously we want to clean this up. And again, we want that chart to be dynamic with the name and the exercise. So to do so, let's just take a copy of what we did earlier. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy I'm just going to copy that formula and paste it over here. Now basically what I did in that particular formula, there's a space in front of it, which is why it's not queuing anything. But what we're going to do is we're going to copy this so we can kind of get the same aspect. So we want to do equals the name value and open quotation, space, open quotation, and this value, enter, and now we have Josh Lamb push press. Now I'm not exactly too keen on the way that looks, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in one more space, put in a hyphen in the middle, and now we have a push press. And I'm going to add in one more space there. So now we have Josh Lamb push press to where now it'll change with that value. And so now I'm going to change my chart type to equal this value here, enter, and there you have it. Now we can just cover up that by moving the chart over, and let's just dress this up a tad bit by putting in our lines. Now it looks a little bit cleaner. Let's add some data callouts. And that looks pretty decent. So now over time you can see the trend of where this individual was with each one of their exercises. Again, this is something that you'll have to play with in the future to really get creative and dynamic with how this feature might work. Now that pretty much concludes everything that I wanted to cover concerning charts and dynamic charts. One thing that I didn't cover is the APA style, and APA basically means it's the same thing, except all you would do is you would just recolor these bar charts or the values in this chart. So let's say, for instance, this was APA. You wanted to kind of format it in a specific fashion. You can format these easily by clicking the Format tab, and you can change these to specific colors. And if I just wanted to do one of these, I can change it differently. As such. And like I said, simplicity or parsimony is the best way. Don't try to add in a whole bunch of colors. Never use 3D graphs. You want them to be as simple as possible. And you don't want multiple different colors. If you're going to stick to a color scheme, make it consistent across the board. Make something that's easy on the eyes. And another thing is to remember is to make sure that your axes are represented clearly, meaning that the scale of them doesn't become misleading to the viewer, thinking that because it's scaled up that there's a huge trend. In fact, you have to make sure that it is notable to where it's not misleading. So that concludes all the aspects that we covered for this next exam. You need to know how to make pivot tables, in addition, how to make these specific graphs. Thank you.